Hey, my name's Doug Beiser. I'm Phoenix, Arizona. I'm retired military and friend of Andrew Dodge here. And I got into murderabilia because a friend of mine that I grew up with, after I joined the military, he got put in jail for murder and dismemberment. And like, this is a guy that I literally looked up to, and one of these people who had a different view of things than me. He always was the anti-violent one and the one that tried to, calm down situations. And, I got into a situation before I joined the military where I was in a I was in an assault. I beat this kid with a golf club without getting into too much details. And I thought I was going to go to jail, and I probably should have. And he was the first person saying, "Hey, I'll take the rap. You have something going for you. You want to go into the military. You're doing this, that, and the other." And then, I come back from after boot camp and try to talk him into going to the military. And he's interested in going, but he disqualifies himself because he sleepwalks. And he told him that. And then, 6 to 8 months later, I find out, he killed this guy and dismembered him. I went home, testified on his behalf, heard horrible, horrible things about, a guy that I grew up with. And the human psyche I just feel like somewhere along the way, if he was involved, the human psyche just broke. It's like he was this kind hearted, good person who tried to keep everybody happy. And then I'm hearing, these horrible things about my friend. So, I mean, that was kind of what got me into the idea of, murderabilia and the collecting of murderabilia, is because I wanted to understand these broke humans. I wanted to understand what they were going through and understand how most of these people were just incredibly, incredibly talented in art and other things. And you're like, what led you to this? Why did you become this when you had this outlet? You know, like I think without, music and other outlets, I think that, you know, things could be darker for me. I could be more depressed, but, I use my outlets to make me happy, you know? And I don't know, that always stuck with me. And he's the only person I've ever wrote. Chad is the only person I've ever wrote in the hobby. Like I'm not like most people. I haven't really wrote anybody. I don't have personal connections even with him. Like it was hard, because it's one of my best friends and he's still one of my best friends. It's just hard to talk to someone that you don't understand, you know? And then when you try to understand them, it's even harder because it's like, why did I miss X, Y, or Z? It's a constant blame game, I think, in my mind, is what could I have done differently that wouldn't gave it this outcome, you know? I know it's kind of a weird one, and this is one we've never really talked about. So I know that it's, it's probably a little bit different for you to hear this side of it. But yeah, that's what got me into collecting. It was just the thought of, what broke this person or what made them this way,
Yeah, that's definitely interesting. I've never heard that, and I guess it does put it in a different perspective. Like for you, for me, I don't know anybody, or I should say, I've never been close with anybody that I knew beforehand committed a murder. But I've always said, like, if my brother or sister, somebody committed a murder, no matter how atrocious it is, I would still, stick by their side and everything. And I'm sure it's, different. Like now that I know that about you, it's different collecting things from murderers and stuff. I'm sure you're not looking at them as like baseball cards, but as rather like
Oh
actual
no.
human beings.
I I think for me, for the collection part, for me, it's like I don't know, all this stuff is discarded by most, like, but it's still important. It's important to the stories of the victims. It's important to finding knowledge. It's important to understanding that individual. I mean, some of these letters have claims in them that have led to probably some type of justice. I do not think that anything that any of these people have done is right in any way, shape, or form. It's just, I just want to understand humans. I want to understand even the most bizarre, horrid. There's something in there somewhere that was a person. And the hard part is just like I said, I don't want to get connected to that. That's why I never wrote, is because I know that I'll find the good in a person that somebody does not think is a good person, and then I'll just be looked at bizarrely. And that's just, I mean, it's weird enough. Like, I have an everyday 9 to 5 job. I'm in work clothes, a button up, and dress pants, and people hear about my collection. They're like, oh, that's kind of bizarre. I mean, it's just another set of tattoos, I guess. I mean, they don't see my tattoos either. It's just something beyond who I am. It's just, I don't know, man. I just think some of this stuff, honestly, I believe should be in museums, and I'm keeping it from a trash dump, in a
Right.
lot of ways, So, I mean, maybe someday they will end up in a museum. Maybe that's where the ultimate destination will be. And I've talked to people about this before, opening something. I have so much stuff in drawers, brother, like, just drawers that, like, I'll go through my stuff and be like, I can't believe I have this. I forgot about it. Like, there's no reason to be forgetting about the stuff that me and you collect. Like it's insane on so many levels. But again, you would have to find something in a place, and then when you do it, you're going to have some kind of uprising, because people aren't going to see it the same way unless you put out some kind of press, explaining what you're doing. I mean, there are very few museums that have done it. You have the Museum of Death in both New Orleans and LA, right? And then you have Zach Bergen's museum in Vegas. And then you have Alcatraz East. Those are the big ones, right? Like, those are the ones that are known and people want to go to. And then outside of that, there's probably a bunch of oddity shops that don't get any press, that nobody ever knows about, that probably have one or two items, And it's just like, a lot of this stuff is in personal collections. And I think a lot of people would find that hard to believe, outside of the hobby, like, how much stuff is in personal collections that, like, that are just sitting around in a drawer, waiting for somebody to ask about them, and you pull them out, and then, people are in awe, but you're like, oh yeah, I've just had this. Like, it's an everyday thing for you, but for other people, it's like, it's not, that's kind of bizarre, I think.
Right. Yeah. I feel like when people finally know about, collecting murderabilia, whatever, they're like, oh, this is weird. This guy's weird as fuck. But then once you actually show them or explain it to them, then I'd say most people, like 85% of people, have like an open mind and aren't like so close-minded about it. Or so I've noticed with certain people. Like, some people are just standoffish and just like, yeah, that's weird. Get the fuck away from me. Like, I don't want to have anything to do with this.
Most people don't even understand. Most people don't even know that it's a hobby. Most people don't understand it, period. Like, and I think, in the beginning, for me, it was just like I said, it was the human mind. And for me, I collect historical items just as well as everything else. I mean, obviously we're talking about the Hafa today. So, I mean, Hoffa is more historical than murderabilia in
Right.
my aspect, because Hoffa was known to be involved with the mob, but as far as anybody knows, he didn't have anything to do with any hits. He didn't have anything to do with anything else other than the rise to power, and then his ultimate disappearance, right? So I mean, it's just a different side of the same coin. It's still murderabilia. I mean, it's just the opposite side of the coin. It's the victim, or what is perceived as the victim to most people, because especially in the 70s, 80s, man, like I bet Hoffa was 60s, 70s, and early 80s when, he disappeared in 75. Even in the early 80s, he was considered like a union god almost. Like this guy did so much for unionization as a whole and did so much good stuff that like people will write off all that bad. Kind of like what they did with JFK and most of the Kennedys. You write off the bad because you see what the good was. And that's why Hoffa was always, even though he did 13 years, a lot of people who like grew up in Midwest towns like I did. I grew up in my father worked in the labor local. He was labor local 218, did construction my entire life. And he was just looked at as this hero because he kept these quote unquote scabs, which is what non-union workers were called by union workers, out of work and was keeping these unions, in power and having the money that they deserved, in his mind. So, I mean, I grew up with a father who was like, yeah, Jimmy Hoffa, because that was just, it was the everyday blue collar man in most people's mind. He was this guy who ultimately befriended the mob. It got into power, rose to power early. He like in his 20s, he rose to power. And then he goes to jail for 13 years, gets out and can't do anything until 80 or whatever agreement that he made with Nixon. And then ultimately meets his demise by probably the same hands that put him in power.
So can you break down just a little like brief definition of what the Teamsters were and are? Because I believe to this day they're still active in Canada and the US, right?
Yeah, so the Teamsters are a union. They're a union organization that I'm not 100% positive what they did. I want to say they were movement. They were more transportation. Am I correct?
I want to say so, yeah, and like lobbying for politics and stuff, right?
Yeah. So they worked. I mean, it worked a lot with the construction bases. I mean, that's why they always talked about Jimmy Hoffa being found in the bases of these stadiums or buildings or in a driveway, because they always just assumed that the labor relations around it had something to do with it. So if he was buried under the giant stadium in New York, or if he was buried under GM headquarters in Detroit, or the Detroit Stadium, or all the theories were always union based. Like he was going to be hidden somewhere union based. There was, obviously the bizarre ones, like some monster took him to Florida or whatever, because some people are crazy and just say crazy things. But I mean, most of them were union related demises. Like he ended up in a cinder block or something. Like, but they've
Yeah,
still never
because he had
found
a
him.
lot of he had a lot of beef with not only the mafia people, but people that were actually working under him, like that wanted to take his position. And then, of course, when he went to prison, they were upset that he wanted to get back into power. Hence, when he disappeared, because they were pissed off, like everything was going good, and then he just wanted to, step in and take over again, like work, basically shit on everything that they had been working on for the past like 13 years or so.
Yeah. So I mean, my understanding is that when he went to Anthony P, he went to Anthony P and told him he wanted to get back into politics, the politicking of the Teamsters, and wanted to be the president again at some point. And Anthony P told him, "I'll gut you and kidnap your grandchildren." So I mean, they had beef, from my understanding, from when they were in prison together at some point in the 60s. And that beef was obviously still there. So, I mean, the ultimate demise is what they say is he was supposed to meet up with Anthony P, and then the Anthony from Detroit and his acquaintance, and supposedly that was what led to the demise. But both of them had rock solid alibis. One was playing cards and one was in front of the fishing wharf. But if that was the case, obviously if you were going to set up, you would no show and have rock solid alibis, right? I mean, that's kind of the way the mafia worked back in the 60s, 70s, right? There's just people just disappeared and slept with the fishes.
Right. Yeah, I've read quite a few stories about that day, and supposedly he met two guys and they shook hands with him, and he was in the backseat of a car, and there was one witness that saw him with like two or three people in a car, and he was never seen, after that day. But of course, like you said, he's buried under here, or here he was fed to the fishes or dissolved in acid, or the Iceman killed him, or like Michael Francis claims the shooter's in prison and he knows where the body is. And so it's like probably more conspiracy theories than 9/11 and JFK put together.
Oh,
And then the Jimmy
100%.
Hoffa
I
case.
believe so. Yeah, Jimmy, because it's just insane. I mean, and yeah, I think the JFK is almost on the same level, I think. But I think a lot of it seemingly could be to deal with FBI. I mean, the FBI were dragging their feet on the case, just focusing on his driver, O'Brien, who had, he had the beef with for 4 years, and then ultimately just kind of, did a little bit here, excavated this driveway there in 2008, did this, but all those documents are still sealed. All that stuff is still sealed. Like, why is the FBI not opening what they have to the public at this point? I mean, any podcast like you or anybody else in true crime could utilize that information, utilize their time and effort, and maybe come up with something that they hadn't seen, or maybe discover something that they're looking past. Like, I don't understand, if they're not fully investigating it still, why they don't open these files to the everyday person. Like, why not get a case solved by somebody, or why not let somebody else look into it if you're not continuing to? That the concept makes zero sense to me.
Yeah, I've always thought that too, and I hope one day in my lifetime that those documents will be declassified before I pass away, because I would really love to read everything, if everything hasn't been destroyed by now.
Yeah, I mean, let's just hope all of it isn't redacted with stuff that's too class. So I mean, what good would it be to have a declassified document with only like 17 words on it? It really does nothing for you. But I mean, you can hope and pray that we get some kind of documents that can lead to something. I mean, even if anybody puts any type of effort into it and finds anything more than what's already out there, I think it's a positive thing. That's my view on it. Like, I like every podcast that's making their effort to make the planet a better place, like literally to find the truth, and find the truth and discover stuff that isn't discovered, or look at things that people don't want to look at, just people that turn a blind eye on things just because they feel like, that answer is good enough. I don't feel like good enough is good enough. I feel like we need solid answers and things, and people deserve to have the truth.
Right. And the cool thing with all this new technology and law enforcement is, like, there's literal cold cases that are older than Jimmy Hoffa's disappearance that are being solved, like, to this day. So I still have my fingers crossed with cases like DB Cooper and the Zodiac, and like, Hoffa, and all these cases, like, please solve them, Jack the Ripper. But some seem like slim to none, to where they're never going to be solved. Same with Hoffa. I mean, there's so many people that know what happened, but of course nobody wants to be known as a snitch or whatever. I mean, let's face it, nowadays the mafia and mob are essentially dead. So if I were one of them, I'd say, fuck it, let's make a couple $1,000,000. Let's give the location of Hoffa's body and let me go into witness protection the rest of my life.
I mean, we've all noticed that witness protection isn't too bad for some people. So I mean, what's especially if you're in your 70s or 80s, like some of these guys probably have to be now, like, what is it? Why might as well live in luxury for the last 3 or 4 years of your life, and if they offer you, oh well, you're 80, like,
Right, exactly.
maybe your family will do better, you know? So, I mean, yeah, 100%. Yeah, I always wish that something comes out, but like a lot of them just lead to dead ends, which is just more frustrating. You know, these people just saying things to get notoriety and they're just trying to get their name out there or try to, you know, X, Y, or Z. You know, I mean, look at the Charles Manson case. Like how many people who had nothing to do with the man just come out of the woodwork and want a part of his will just because they supposedly have some relation to him. You know, I think that's odd to me. It's like you didn't want to have anything to do with the man. I understand, you know, in all accounts of most normal people, he wasn't a great person, but he did have friends, you know, that actually cared about him and, you know, wrote him and spent time with him without this blood that, you know, had nothing to do with him his entire life. You know, I just, I, the concept is just weird to me. Like human beings in prison and animals are just treated just so horribly on this planet. Animals are treated like their property when that makes zero sense. And you know, with prisoners, most of these are privately owned prisons that are getting, you know, paid for the work that these prisoners are doing. You know, they're now granted, you know, most of those prisoners are there for something that they did wrong, but at the same time, what it's just a different type of child labor. It's just people turn a blind eye to it because it's not children, it's prisoners. You know,
Right.
that concept is just so bizarre, or they just don't understand it. Like most people don't understand the privatized prison system. They don't understand how much money and how much product is, you know, made and sent out from a prison and sold. Like they're probably making money hand over fist, like, but nobody cares because they're prisoners. You know, that's that's bizarre to me too. Like, I don't know, man. I think that that's probably another reason why I got into true crime is because I just don't like turning a blind eye to anything. You know, it's like if I see something that's bizarre, it doesn't make sense, I'm going to follow it and I'm going to see what happens. And when you get to the end of the circle, like, I mean, look at prison now. Look how many people are in prison for marijuana that's, you know, legal in a lot of the states these people are still in prison for. You know, and that's insane to me. It's like you literally have had these people in jail for 15, 20 years for marijuana and you're letting rapists back on the streets.
Yep.
Like where, you know, where is our political system failing us, you know, and why are we continuing to let it fail us, you know? So I mean, politics are politics, man. Politics and religion are those two things that like you can't really touch. But I mean, let's be honest, murderabilia is one of those things that a lot of people don't touch either. But I
Yeah, that
mean,
is true.
but I mean, it's just it's hurtful, man. It's hurtful to see what people go through. It's hurtful to see that people are forgotten that they're people just because they make mistakes. You know, like I'm not saying that, you know, these people should be treated like, you know, kings and queens, but like the way that we use them is wrong. And I don't know, man. Finding a happy medium is harder than me. That's why I'm not in politics, you know. So I don't have the answer, but I just know that what we're doing with our prisoners is not the answer, if that makes
Right.
any sense.
Right. Yeah. In America, I mean, you could say that inmates have, you know, like the full extent of rights, even though they really don't. But if you look at different other countries, like you go to the Middle East or like Panama or wherever, like, man, some of those prisons are crazy. Like I've heard stories of sex offenders being disemboweled like the day they got to prison, being like raped to death by other inmates and having like their genitals yanked out and like cut off. And like prison officials are like, we have no idea who did it. You know, like in some countries are just like brutal, just torture. I mean,
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
there was one case a few years ago in America. This mentally ill man, he was in the shower and the officers like turned the water on. It was scalding hot, and the dude literally died from his skin being like, I think he had like 90% of his body was burnt, and they left him in the shower scalding hot, and he was like just so mentally fucked he couldn't turn the water off or anything, you know. And it's like America, that's literally the United States of America, that should happen here.
Well, I mean, again, not to get into politics, but I mean, the vetting process for police officers and detention officers needs to be better.
Oh
You
yeah,
know,
definitely.
like the things that we see on the streets and the way that people treat prisoners in prison. I'm not saying all of them, but I mean, let's be honest, man. If I put 6 drinks in front of you and say there's poison in one of them, are you gonna want to take a drink?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like if 1 in 6 is a problem, that 1 in 6 is a death sentence, you know? So I mean, we really have to figure it out. And yeah, the money's the problem. Money's always the problem. How are we going to be able to properly investigate these people? I mean, it doesn't take much, man. Like talk to a few of their friends from high school. Like I was in the military. I retired from the Marine Corps. I went through a top secret clearance process. I went to tell one of my neighbors that I'd never talked to before that she might get interviewed. And she said, well, I wish you would have told me the other day because they actually just came by the other day and I told them I had no idea who you were. I mean, that's the military, man. Like, so I don't understand. I mean, for a town, I guess it might be difficult, but when you're like talking sheriffs or some of these higher up ranking military, I mean, police officers, like there's no reason to not have a full view of who this person was. I mean, you could just
Right.
go talk to people they were in high school with and find out if they had racist tendencies. I mean, come on, man. It isn't that hard. We've all seen things and growing up, you're like, that dude does not like somebody for some reason,
Right.
but you know who they are and how they act. Like all you'd have to do is just talk to people. Be like, yeah, you know what? He's gonna have the superiority complex and he's going to act some type of way. Okay, well, maybe we should let him be a police officer. And
Right.
then maybe that would fix the stigma that would make people want to be police officers again. Because there's a lot of good people who will not be a police officer because they don't want to be looked at like that negative aspect that everybody sees police as now. Like, let's be honest, we need them some way, shape, or form. Like, in a lawless, chaotic society, we wouldn't be able to live. Like, I don't believe like we need some kind of things that make things normal for people, and that's what police are supposed to do. They're supposed to bring normalcy to people. They work for us, but that's not how they're seen. And so we have to fix that stigma. But how? Again, somebody smarter than me has to figure that out. But people like us have to ask the questions, right? I mean, they have to bring the questions to the heads that are supposed to bring them in to where they're supposed to be. That's why local elections matter so much. Like everybody wants to focus on the president, the senator, but that really doesn't matter when you're not focusing on, your judges in your counties, I mean, for Christ's sake, for most of the justice of the peace are just retired politicians that are just slipping into the place just unopposed. You or me can run for a justice of the peace. All you have to do, well, at least in the state of Arizona, all you have to do to run for the justice of the peace is read and write in English and be residing in the county that you're running for. That's it. It's like, but people don't know any of this stuff because they don't dig into it. They don't divulge themselves into find the information. People just want to be sheep, unfortunately. Not all people, but some people just want to be sheep. Some people just want to see what's in front of them and nothing more. I mean, it's unfortunate, but I mean, that's how I see it. Like a lot of people just want to see this. Is my life going good? All right, cool. That's that narrow tunnel vision.
Right. On the topic of like law enforcement, police officers and everything, I feel like my dad's a retired police officer and detective, and he would always talk about de-escalation as like the number one most important thing as an officer. Like someone's having a mental health crisis, you don't shoot them 20 times in the back of the head because they're having like a manic episode or whatever. Like, and of course, like if you feel some type of way against minorities or gay people, whatever, like if someone's having a mental health crisis, you're going to act like an asshole or like bigotry, you know, towards them. And I feel like de-escalation is the number one thing. Like if you can't de-escalate children, you know, fighting whatever, you shouldn't be a police officer. I mean, because you're going to pull your gun out at any time you're scared or nervous or whatever. And that's like how officers end up shooting their tasers, you know, when it's a gun or whatever, or all
Well,
these fucked up things, you know, happen in the news. Like it's like almost every day now, a unarmed man was shot in the back or paralyzed, shot like 20 times. Like there's no need for any of that. I mean, like look at Canada, all these countries with like, I mean, I'm not saying take away all the guns, but you know, police officers definitely need to learn how to use non-lethal force, like Sweden and Canada and all these places.
well, that's what I don't understand is like, you know, when in the military, I went through security force training, and all that is de-escalation of force. You're focused on de-escalation of force and, and and what you're allowed to do. Like so, you know, if somebody's coming at you with their hand, you're not going to pull out anything other than maybe your baton or your pepper spray. You know, you're not supposed to seriously injure these people. You're supposed to just decapacitate them. You know, like you're supposed to be able to take care of yourself and take care of them at the same time. You know, like trust me, I've been pepper sprayed. I had to be pepper sprayed in order to be able to carry pepper spray. It sucks a lot. And if you pepper spray somebody, they're 9 times out of 10, they're going to fall. I mean, the only way that you should be using anything more than pepper spray is if they're coming at you with lethal force, if they're chasing you with a gun or chasing you with a knife. Like, other than that, like you have a taser, you have most of the time, police will have a taser to their disposal, a baton at their disposal, and pepper spray. All of them suck. I mean, trust me, like all of them suck. Or why don't we have more rubber bullets? I mean, just like you said, I mean, if we're going to use guns, why don't we have ways to use guns that are not lethal? Why are we not using rubber bullets or beanbag bullets or something that will incapacitate them but not kill them? You know, like everybody deserves human rights, man. Like everybody, even if you're mentally ill, like even if you're going through whatever you're going through, even if you're on drugs, you still deserve those, you know, basic human rights. And just like you said, they're constantly, it just seems like they're constantly being taken away. And the cops are just looked frowned upon. I mean, it's horrible. It literally is, because I mean, you're supposed to be able to rely on those people. You know, you're supposed to not have that fear. Like, and people are teaching their kids to fear the police because of the fear of police. And just like I said, I don't know how to fix it, but we have to fix it. Like there's no need for people to tell their, you know, their kids 5, 6 years old, don't trust that police officer. Like that's not a world I want to live in. Like I want people to have faith in their local law enforcement. Like know that they have their well-being in their mind. Like, do I know how to fix it? No, I don't. But I mean, in a perfect world, I think that's what we all want to see. Like somebody who really cares about their community, serving their community, and you know, having those people be the majority and be seen, and not these minorities of police officers that do the bad be seen. Like, but media is media, man. Media is going to spend whatever they want to spend and put out whatever they want to put out. And unfortunately, it gives a bad name to police officers, and it makes people not want to be police officers, because the guy that wants to serve his community is afraid to serve his community because he's afraid he's going to be looked down upon, when all he wants to do is the right thing. That's a horrible existence, you know, like to think that like you grew up your entire time, like, you know, that there are kids like who say that they want to be cops from like they're 5 and 6. We play cops and robbers. Say you want to serve the community the entire time, and then you grow up and you see the people that you idolize not being the people you want to idolize. And it just changes your whole perspective on life. And And now we miss out on that opportunity to have that cop who gives a care about his community and really cares about everything that goes on because of all the negativity. And it's unfortunate. And again, I don't know how to fix it, but it's sad. I mean, it's sad to believe that we're coming to an age where people will scream out, all cops are bastards, and not even think about who they may or may not know who are in a police uniform, or who have served in a police uniform. Like, just like you said, your father was a detective and a retired police officer. Like, I see the way the police are now, but even that call, it hurts my heart, because your father, in my mind, he had to be a good man because he freaking retired from the police department. He raised a good person in you. So I mean, so that all cops are bastards like call, it's harmful. It's harmful to the legacy of the people who came before. It's harmful to the ones that want to serve the community now. And so, but again, like, how do you fix it? Like, run the entire police department out and then put in new people? Like, there's no correct way to fix any problem other than communities that care. You have to care about your community and work within your community to make the community you want. And that starts with voting, and that starts with saying hello to your neighbor to your left and your right, because it takes a village, man. That's how it always starts. It takes a village, and to have those people to your left and your right who care about you helps things go smoother in life, because you'll never know when you'll get a call, hey, XYZ is happening, like, watch out. Like, it's important. I think it's important you take care of your community, and it's important that you have friends that actually care about your well-being. So I think that goes in the big scheme of the whole thing. We're getting way off subject. My bad, brother.
Oh no, it's cool. It's cool. And another thing to add is I think accountability is a huge thing too. Like, a lot of I shouldn't say a lot, but I'd say a small percentage of these officers that are committing, murders, I guess you could say, of unarmed, civilians, are actually being held accountable, and that's helping weed some bad ones out. I mean, unfortunately, some people end up passing away from it, but they're also taking the bad cops off the streets, whether they're put into prison or banned from working a law enforcement job for life. Like, accountability I think is a huge thing too when it comes to, this, and police officers and correctional officers and politicians and, whatever. I mean, we're seeing social media can destroy somebody, whether politician, cop, whatever. And
Oh, absolutely. But I agree. Accountability is key. I truly believe it is. But I mean, just like in the military, you have this brotherhood of people who do not want to snitch, and it's that hard line that you have to decide, like, is this wrong? And am I doing a disservice to my badge by not holding this person accountable? Like, it really comes down to badge over brotherhood. You have to really realize that in order to fix the problem, you got to be part of the solution. And if wrong is wrong, and that's what it really comes down to. And yeah, accountability, 100%.
right, yeah, I mean, that's always tough. I mean, you got those instances, like, look at George Floyd. I can't imagine all of the officers there wanted to just sit by, but they were being, broadcasted on national TV, and I'm sure they were thinking, if I stop to try to stop my fellow officer, like, what's going to happen to me? That's the sad thing, is you feel like you can't do anything because you're going to be punished or fired, or death threats happen from, back the blue supporters or whatever. Like, it's really sad.
Well, I mean, I think that everybody just gets in their head, and they focus on their own skewed logics. Like, 99% of the time, the problem is like, people don't want to look at the whole truth. Like, they don't want to see everything as it is, and look at the way things turned out and see what was wrong. They just want to say, this is how it is, because just like you said, the Back the Blue crowd, like, this is how it is. They're cops. They're the ones in charge. Like, they can't do no wrong, like, almost that mindset. Like, and that's no good for anybody, the far right or the far left. Like, every time we go there, it just causes more and more problems. It's like, why can't we all try to find some happy medium, like, instead of just going to the far right and far left and everybody just, having outages. Or we have the George Floyd situation, we have the Kyle Rittenhouse situation, all these situations, and you can see horrible situations in both, and you can see things that a normal human being would have done in both. And it's horrible to think about that, because if you were in that situation, you might have done things differently, or you might say you would have done something and you might have done nothing at all. Like, the reality of things is that is what it is. Like, good, bad, or indifferent, like, people make decisions and they need to be held accountable for their decisions one way or another. Like, and the way that situations go recently, it seems like, is just as you said, it's like every day it's something. The escalation of force is just too much. Like, they're going at people, 4 or 5 people, to hold down one person while they're kneeing them in the face and doing this, that, and the other, and that's just not needed. Like,
All while telling
that
them to stop
concept is not.
resisting while they're like punching them in the face and like,
Yeah,
I don't understand it. Like a woman at that, or like a teenage, like a child, like you need, like I even saw it with my own nephew one time. Like my nephew, he was 15 at the time. It took 4 or 5 officers to come arrest him. Like, of course he was being a little mouthy like teenagers are, but it's like, you need the entire police department to come and arrest a 15-year-old child. Like, and then like having your knee on his neck, while, because like nobody wants to have shit talk to them, but you shouldn't treat a child or adult like, with force just because they're calling you like fat or whatever, like.
well, mouthy or not, like, there's it's a teenager, man. Like, if I got a knee to my neck every time I said something stupid as a teenager, I probably wouldn't be here.
Right.
Like, let's just be honest. Like, we all make mistakes, man. And that, again, is situations like that cause everlasting impressions in people. He will always remember that. And it's going to be hard for him to have a positive experience with police officers because of that. And that's sad, man. That's really fucking sad. That probably changed his entire view on police just because of 5 or 6 assholes that were upset because some kid was talking trash to him. But that's, again, the basic superiority complex, brother. Like, you need to show a 15-year-old or a 14, 15-year-old that bad that you're in charge. Disgusting. Like,
Right.
pure disgusting. Like, that's and anybody who saw that probably felt the same way. They could have changed 15, 20 people's view of situation just by being human. Just by saying, hey, man, I understand that you're going through XYZ, or just giving them a minute to focus on whatever's going on. Like, I wasn't even in the situation, I can tell you that. Like, he obviously was no kind of violent towards them, or any way could have hurt them. Like, there's 5 or 6 of them. That's,
Well,
man,
especially when you're in handcuffs, and there's always that one cop that stands by, and there was that one cop that was just standing there, just like
looking off in the air. Yeah.
looking around and like just a body there, like not wanting, because everybody filmed. Like, I didn't film anything, or I mean, I could have, but whenever you get filmed, especially police officers, they change their tune sometimes. I wouldn't say all the time, but you look at these, what do they call the fifth audit amendments or whatever they're called, and like it's just always interesting to see how sometimes police officers will act different with there's like a camera in their face or whatever. And I guess not just police officers, everyday people at that as well. I mean, you get
Oh
these
yeah.
viral videos all the time of people changing their tunes as soon as they have a video on them.
I mean, I think it goes both ways. I mean, I think it is important to hold people accountable for their actions. Like, so I think video recording sometimes is a good thing because you can get people who are being ultimately racist or just downright evil people, and you can get them right in, you know, right where they need to be getting. you know,
Right,
like
nail them to the wall.
they
Yeah,
they people need to know about these people. They're dirty, and people need to know that. And then you have the other ones that like are just wanting to put a camera in your face just to put a camera in your face. And that just makes the situation just worse when it wasn't really a situation to begin with. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, there's good and bad to every situation, man. Like, thank God there wasn't cameras when I was growing up everywhere because my God, like even social media and stuff, man, like you can't even be a kid anymore without, you can't make normal mistakes a kid can make and be on social media because everybody will have, you're out. Like
yep.
that's
The internet's forever. Yeah, like
yeah,
you do anything for clout. I mean, it seems like anybody will do
yeah.
anything
So
nowadays to go viral, whether it's hurting their own family or friends or like embarrassing people. I don't get it. I mean, people killing themselves over things going viral, like it's crazy.
dude, I mean, for Christ's sake, how many shootings have how many live Facebook live shootings have we seen? Like,
Right.
for Christ's sakes, man. Like and honestly, I believe in the US that the shootings exist the way that they do is because we glamorize them. I hate to say it, but I mean, how many shootings do you hear of in schools in other countries? We know they happen, right? Like, but ever since Columbine, it's been a glamorization of these people. Like, it's they go out as martyrs, like to some, and that's horrible.
Right,
Like,
right. I mean, and crime figures alike. Like, look at the Boston Bombers, like the Rolling Stones cover. One of the Boston Bombers was on there.
yeah,
He was like this
yeah,
handsome kid, and like, what does that tell other kids that are handsome? Like, should I go bomb someplace so I can get fangirls,
it's
fangirling over me in prison? Or
that the concept is insane. Yeah, but for real, I mean, we glamorize tragedy so much. It's like when people don't have anything else to hold on to, that's where they go. It's like if you feel like that you're outcast and people don't like you and people pick on you, it's like it seems like the answer is to pick up a gun.
right,
And like that concept is really weird to me. Like I was in high school when freaking Columbine happened, and I wore a trench coat to school every day. That was before all this crap happened. Like I was I was frowned upon something weird, man, when Columbine happened. But that was just who I was. Like I just wore a trench coat. Like it was just who I was. And unfortunately, like you had that view, which to me it kind of partially worked to my advantage because like I was always the weird kid anyway, and I wore a trench coat, and then now nobody wants to mess with me. But I never had any of those negative thoughts like let's pick up a gun and do something. But it was just like it was kind of nice to know that like people weren't picking on me anymore because these two assholes like shot up a school. I mean, it's horrible to say, but I mean, at the time when you're getting picked on a lot and then something like that happens and then the picking doesn't happen as much and all this is in the media, yeah, it's easy for very people with very low morals and seeing things in a different light as seeing these people as heroes. Like it's unfortunate, but I mean it's if you look at it from somebody who's been teased and bullied their entire life and then all of a sudden they're not getting teased and bullied anymore because of people like that, like it gives them a different view of things, which it shouldn't, but that's what happened. I mean, that's what happened with Columbine, man. I think, and that's what continues to happen to this day. I mean, we glamorize all these school shooters. We talk about them in the news. We talk about their names. Why are we focusing on the names of these shooters? We should be focusing on the names of the victims and nothing more. We shouldn't even talk about the shooters. The only people who should know the shooters are the victims' families. That's it. Like, they should be disposed of however way, they should go on trial just like everybody else, obviously, but they shouldn't be glamorized like that. That's disgusting to me, man. Like that. And just like I said, I mean, I grew up being picked on. I grew up, that kid that wore the trench coat, and when all that happened, yeah, people stopped picking on me, but at what cost? Like, was it worth it? Because we have, hundreds of shooters after them that I would say no. But at the time, I felt like, hey, this was good. That's disgusting, but at the time I felt like it was good because I was the kid that got picked on. I didn't want to be picked on anymore. I didn't want to do anything crazy or irrational, but I sure did love how they didn't pick on me anymore. And that's the reason why they're glamorized, because people who are very low on themselves and very low on human life as a whole will gravitate to something that they seem to understand, and then we have more shooters because they think that they understand something that we don't, like everyday people don't understand. Like, man, like, we've all went through crazy things in our life. We've all experienced bullying, I think, for the most part, but I've never came to the realization that, like, taking a life would fix that. I always, especially now, it's like, kill them with kindness, man. Like, if people want to be mean to you or evil to you, kill them with kindness. Make them regret it. Make them regret how evil and morally wrong that they are. It's just, and it hurts them so much. It hurts people so much that want to be mean to you when you're just like, yeah, man, like, here, hey, I brought you some lunch, like, literally, man, like, I think that the world needs to focus more on being positive, man, focusing on the positive and showing that positivity brings positive results. Like, like, shooting should not pull more media attention that people that are raising money for the homeless in their hometown, saving lives. Like, why is that? Why is good not publicized, but bad is all over everywhere?
We can round out this bit with the two Jimmy Hoffa items you have. I think you said you had a photo there and a signed book of his.
Yeah. So as we discussed, I think the best way to get into true crime is always to do the promo photos, like the ones that you can get. Literally, you can get the press photos almost anywhere. They're kind of nice, and then they're mostly stamped. These are stamped from 82, I think. No, 62. Look at me not being able to read. So this is after he got out of prison. And then this is the book. I really wish I had not lost the information on this. So this was actually given to one of his secretaries. I had a good story and a good information on it, but I lost my Facebook and lost all that crap. So unfortunately, this is the book that, obviously, it's in really old, beat up shape, but it's a paperback book signed by him. It was actually typed out to her, Frances Smith. Kind of a cool one, man. But yeah, I had a nice story of Providence on it and lost it when I lost my Facebook. So that kind of sucked. But yeah, it's one of those ones, honestly, with Hafa, they'll actually, the PSA will actually do the signature on them. So I'm thinking about sending this in for PSA authentication. Um,
do you know what like an average Hoffa signature would run? Like say you were on like eBay or auction house or whatever.
when I'm finding the cheapest I'm finding Hoffa signatures for are between like $800 and $1,200 on the average. Um, Auction, you might be able to get them cheaper, but I mean, that's what I'm seeing for on eBay. Like, you know me, man, I have watches on a lot of items and pick up scavenger items here and there for, pennies on the dollar. And I think I got this one for like shortly, like a little over $200, which was, unheard of at the time. I've had it for quite a bit of time. Um, the other one that I got that's really cool is I have a Mark David Chapman book that was signed to his cellmate at the time, and it's signed by both the author of the book and Mark David Chapman. I had purchased that with a Chapman ID and another autographed Chapman book that I've sold off. Just, I think there's so much stuff that went through my hands over the course of time. Like it's hard to fathom. Like when you talk about some of the stuff that like have went through your hands or that you have owned, it's like I know when I talk to people about some of the stuff that I've owned or has went through my hands, people are like, no way, no way. And most of the stuff I have pictures of, when I had it. So I'm like, yeah, here it is. Check this out. And people were like, no way. That's insane. And a lot of the time, I think average everyday person will have the same aspect as what they probably have to me as to you is why is this not in a museum? Like because no museums care about it. Like we care about it. The average everyday collector cares about it, and we bring them into our home, and then people get the luxury of seeing them someday if they're happen to be around our house or happen to know us or whatever. I mean, yeah, I think all of us would love to have a museum, but the idea financially is not as easy as what it would be in a thought process. Maybe we could do smart enough. We could just all go in together and just do a tour, bring a couple pieces of our stuff together and do an art tour.
Yeah, Taylor from Cult Collectibles and I were talking about that like a week and a half ago about museums, and it's a great idea, but the Museum of Death and I believe Hollywood or Los Angeles or something, I believe had to shut down, and I'm assuming is due to not being able to get enough foot traffic and being like one of the greatest destinations in the world to have a business. Like, I feel like museums, it's a really cool concept, but you have to have so much foot traffic coming in. You got to pay the light bill, you got to pay the rent, you got to pay the people
100%.
that work. Like, and it's like it's like I feel like it's a dream job, and I feel like you have to be well off to have one, just so you if it fails, you can be like, ah, whatever, it didn't work out. But a museum is such a great idea, but it's also scary at the same time because like imagine having to sell off all your high end stuff just to break even and like close your museum down. That would really suck.
No, that would be horrible. No, and that's what I'm saying. Maybe a museum is not the way to go. Maybe like a traveling art show.
Yeah,
Like you get a
like a
couple,
pop-up museum or something like that.
yeah, you get a couple of the bigger collectors into it, bring 2 to 3 pieces a piece, do 10 to 15 big cities and just have pop-ups, just hit markets that are huge and have the opportunity to show some of this stuff. Just a thought, man. Like it's just one of those pop in the head kind of moments. Like, I mean, we could each travel with 2 to 3 pieces easily.
Right. Yeah,
You
that would
put
be
them in a
awesome.
carry-on, make sure we're all good, and we just meet up and just. I mean, obviously, it would take some planning, but I think it's something that could be done.
Yeah, that does sound awesome. Almost like kind of like a death row art show, but 30, 40, 50, whatever years later.
Yeah, like literally, we could do it differently. We could do it at the well, I guess Death Row Art Show was the same way. It was just everyday collectors who just came together and just did something. I mean, we could do the same thing, just hit big cities, big markets, see what happens. I mean, just show the art, not even sell it, just show the art, let people see some of these pieces they won't have the opportunity to see. We all have catalogs. Like, I wish I had my stuff cataloged the way I wish. Like, there, it's in drawers. I need to find it, obviously, but I mean, but I mean, we all have enough stuff. We could definitely do something, and we could probably do a few different ones if we were smart about it.
Yeah, yeah, that would be interesting, like serial killer exhibits or mass murder exhibits or school shooter exhibits. I think that would definitely be, especially things that would change every single month or city or whatever. I think that'd be
Yeah, you just hit
really
different
cool.
cities and do different things, and just the mindset would be to show a different side of this. Show the side that people don't understand. Show like some like just as we're talking, some of this stuff should be in museums, like it literally should be. Like it's crazy that it's not, but just like you said, the foot traffic, that's always the problem. The only one that's really, as far as I know, that's making money is Alcatraz East, but they have so many high end pieces.
Oh yeah,
They have the you went recently, but I mean they have everything that of huge value that somebody would want. I mean, you could probably pull Arthur Sawgrass's car. Doesn't somebody in the hobby own that?
yeah. Paul Blicetti actually owns that in Rochester, New York. Crazy enough, and that's definitely museum quality. Like at the Alcatraz East Museum, they have OJ's Bronco. They have Bundy's Volkswagen, the Gacy, Pogo and Patches clown suits. They have
Yep.
Bundy's typewriter. Just so much, I mean, crazy stuff, not to even mention the non-murderabilia stuff, like you got like outlaw stuff and Martin Luther King Jr.'s death mask and all this crazy shit. Like I bet you that stuff's insured for like 10 plus $1 million. Like it's got to be a
Well,
crazy amount.
last I knew, they didn't even own the Bronco. The Bronco was still for sale. They were trying to get $1 million for it.
Oh wow,
I
that's
think
crazy.
it was on, and if I'm not mistaken, that was on like Pawn Stars or something. There's like a Pawn Stars episode of the freaking white Bronco.
Yeah, I think I remember that. That's pretty wild. Yeah, definitely a collector's item.
Yeah, I
Sure.
mean, but yeah, but I mean, just I mean, it would be cool. It would be cool to do something like as a group of people. Like I've known you for what going on 10 years now,
Yeah,
something
something
like
like that.
that.
Yeah.
And Adam too. Like, and I've never got to meet you guys in person. It would what better way to do it than to freaking figure out some way to do a show, even if it was just a one off, man. Even if we just found Chicago or New York, or if we could all just get together and even if break even, just cover our travel, it would just be cool to do.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, that would be an experience to say the least. And especially meeting everybody, I think would be networking is always the more fun thing to me, especially going to conventions and festivals. It's never making the money, it's the connections and everything. I love talking to people that make you feel, like at home and not so weird and
Oh,
out of place.
absolutely. Yeah. Dude, sorry to get off subject, but it was just the thought process. Like literally, like I have I have a couple items that I truly feel like. Well, I mean, we've talked about them before. I have Warnos's last commissary receipt, which to most people probably doesn't mean anything. But I mean, this is 48 hours before her death, and she's like bitch moaning and complaining about beef and cheese sticks. Like that's odd to me. Like you're about to end your fate, but you're worried about getting your Slim Jim. That concept didn't make any sense to me. But I mean, like, teach their own, though. I mean, like, what? It's a piece of paper that could have been shredded to anybody else,
Right,
but
right.
now it's framed with a signed Polaroid of her, you know, that's in my closet because I don't even have it hanging up. It's just I just wanted to preserve it. I wanted to have it preserved and for people to be able to see it at some point. So I mean, that would be one of those items that would be awesome to be able to display somewhere and be able to have people see it. But again, just like you said, the only way to do something is to find some way to do it that we don't have to pay light bills or anything. We're just renting a venue maybe and saying we're paying X amount of money and sell tickets and try to figure it out. But
Right. Yeah, I have so many museum quality pieces that are just even getting wrinkled day by day. Like I have a Sirhan full signature on a courtroom sketch, and his entire legal team signed it too. Like it's a dream piece, holy grail, and I just have it loosely sitting out with my Jack Spillman art and my Sarah Aldretti painting. Just ran like I have so much stuff that's just not preserved. You know, like my Manson Polaroid and all. Like I know eventually I'm gonna regret it. Something's eventually gonna get torn, or that's gonna teach me. That's gonna be my lesson that I learn one day.
yeah, but I mean, honestly, I think that it would be cool to get some of our bigger pieces just off a shelf or off something, put them in something and figure out a way to display them and have people be able to see them, even if it's just a one-off somewhere and we can figure out a place to do it. Like that'd be cool. Like just like I said, just as you said, like the networking piece would be the best. Like even if we just broke even, it would be cool just to meet all you guys in person and be able to talk about our pieces to people. Just like just for people to see stuff that honestly we take for granted. Like we have them, they're grail pieces to us. We know they're grail pieces, but just as you said, mine's in the closet. Yours is just laying out. It's just the concept is silly. Like they should be displayed somewhere where people should see them, and maybe we should make that a thing at some point.
Yeah, that definitely sounds good. We should definitely look into that in the near future, and who knows what the future holds. I mean, life is like a box of chocolates, as Forrest Gump would say.
All of them will kill your dog. Is that like I don't
right?
No, but seriously, it's been nice to talk to you, brother. Like it's cool to like just sit down and just chat about what we both literally have took a lot of our life to understand or try to get into. And it's a weird hobby, man. There's a lot of weird people in it that make things really difficult and makes you want to get out of the hobby. You know that.
Right. Yeah.
It's
but you also got to look at what you're dealing with. I mean, you're dealing with things from rapists and murderers and child killers, and
a
it
lot of it
definitely.
doesn't bring a lot of positive vibes, 100%. But I mean,
Right,
it's crazy how many people who act so nice can be so evil in this hobby. If that makes any sense.
oh yeah, definitely. I mean, there was one person at one point that I was friends with. Come to find out, the dude had these crazy. I think I know you'll know who I'm talking about. Who had these crazy thoughts of rounding up homeless people and taking them to like concentration camps and having them killed. And I don't know if you know who I'm talking about, but there's a lot of crazy people in this hobby that are just like have the craziest beliefs, and you're open to your own beliefs, of course, but it's how people get ostracized, like a few
Well,
people in the hobby.
it's also how the whole hobby gets a bad name, because typically it's those people that have those crazy views that are at the forefront of the hobby,
Right.
unfortunately.
Right.
Like the people that people know to be involved in the hobby or whatever. Like, like most people outside of the people I know within the hobby don't really know that I involve myself with this stuff. Like, my close friends and family do, but I mean, like the everyday person doesn't know that I collect, murderabilia. Like
Right.
it's not something, it's not a conversation starter. It's like, hey, guess what? I have XYZ from serial killers in my house. Like no, that's not a good conversation starter, bro. Like
Yeah,
it doesn't work very well.
yeah. I've just had to adapt with it over the years. But people, whenever people always ask what I do, I tell them like, "Oh, that's interesting. Tell me more." Whatever. But before the podcasting, it was always like, whatever. Like, yeah, just
Well, when at least when you have the podcast, you have a reason for it. Like you're like,
right,
look, I'm delving into this. I'm talking to, this person or that person. You've developed these relationships that got you this far, you know, like you develop these relationships with these inmates, with these people, you've put time, effort, you know, you're a genuine person, you know what I'm saying? Like, and all you're trying to do is just spread what you find with people. That's cool, man. Like, it's cool that you have the opportunity to do that. And it's cool that people, the average everyday person, looks at this as a positive thing. That's cool. You know, like, you don't have, I wouldn't assume that you have the amount of hate mail that you would have received before, like when you were just selling, for example. I think you probably got more hate selling than you've done with the podcast.
Oh
is
yeah,
that
definitely.
correct?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the only like negative comments I've had with the podcast is like at first, like the sound quality or whatever, like, or somebody will randomly reach out to me who is a co-defendant of someone, like that's bullshit, you know, whatever. But there's nothing too negative that's come out. No, like, you know, negativity with victims, family members, or offenders, family members, just the occasional like co-defendant here and there, or maybe something ramps up at their prison and they're like, you know, I wasn't expecting this. Like there was a serial killer in Illinois who who didn't think my interview was going to be heard, and the next day after it came out, he's like, man, all these guards are fucking with me and all these inmates. And because he's you know, killed 4 children and one woman and had sex with their bodies and everything and talked about everything in depth. And I'm like, yeah, well, I mean, people hearing that, I imagine they'd probably say something to you and are curious or whatever, you know, like,
Like,
but
why do you think it wasn't going to get heard, brother? Like, that's the idea of me having a podcast, is for people
right,
to hear
right.
it. Yeah, I could feel that. Like, but honestly, I just think it's funny because I think now we're coming to an age where it's more accepted. You know, like with Dahmer just coming out, and you know, and serial killer documentaries and everything just being the forefront of things, like things that we did, you know, 9-10 years ago is not as frowned upon now as it was then. Like when I first got into this stuff, like people thought I told like 2 people and people thought I was nuts. Like they're like, why are you getting involved in this? And I was like, I don't know. It's something to do. Like literally, that's what it was for me. It was like in the beginning, it was like I was watching things and then like looking up things, and that's how I did it. I watched a movie about a documentary about Whitey Bulger and started to look up Whitey Bulger artwork and found this freaking picture on eBay for $200. Buy it now, and I was like, I'm buying this, and I bought it, and then I showed it off in a group that I was in, that I knew that people weren't going to be weirded out about it when I got it, and that's how I met Wade. And Wade introduced me to you. And so, I mean, like that was kind of how it happened. It was like kind of organic. It was a fully accident that just kind of went down this rabbit hole. And then I just went further and further down the rabbit hole. It was just like, at first, it was just the thought of just reading and understanding the stuff and watching the documentaries and getting more information than people knew. Like, I just wanted to know more than other people. I wanted to understand things from different aspects and, you know, see both sides of the story. And then all of a sudden it was like, all right, this is cool. Like, I can't believe that this was done in a prison, you know. And then it was just falling down that rabbit hole. It's like the talent of these inmates, like it's insane. Like there's the one in Arizona, Chuck Reinbrandt or Reinhardt,
Reinhardt, yeah.
great artist, fucking one of the most phenomenal artists you'll ever see, and not a very well-known killer. I mean, I think he only killed one person. I mean, I say only one person, like it's like a nothing. But I mean, my point is like he's not a well-known person, but his artwork is well known. You know,
Yeah.
his art is insane. It's just like insane what this guy does with like next to nothing. Like, and just like I was talking about, what if he just relied on art? You know, what if he would have went the way of art and not the way of anger? You know,
Right,
like
right.
what would have changed? You know, like And I think I think that's why the whole kill with kindness thing is my kind of mantra. You know, it's like maybe your one kind act could stop somebody from doing something like this. You know?
That's always been my thought too, is like you never know when you're gonna run into like a Tommy Lynn Sells or like a El Mano Negro, where like say you cut them off in traffic and they're like, I'm gonna follow this motherfucker home and kill him. Like you never know who's having a
Uh-huh.
bad day or whatever, you know. That's why I'm always nice. Like you cut me off in traffic, like I'm not flipping you off or anything. I'm just I'll cuss and say what I gotta say and just move on with my day.
Yeah, typically the same way. And I'll kind of cuss down in my lap. I have personalized license plates, man. Like I'm asking for somebody to find me if I'm doing something stupid. Like, you know, it's common everyday common sense though. I mean, yeah, you could piss off the wrong person at any time and you could do the wrong thing, but I mean, you could do the right thing and still have the same output, you know, like you never know with people. But I mean, I think that it's important, like after going through bouts of depression myself and going through, you know, different aspects in life, I just think that it's important for people to feel validated, you know, for people to feel like that they're cared about. And even if that means like you saying, hey, good morning to somebody, like you could have stopped that guy from picking up a freaking axe and hacking up his family. You have no idea. Like,
Right, right.
you know, it's just like, you know, try to put people in a positive aspect, you know, try to be positive on people. And that was a hard one for me to learn because when there's a bunch of negative in your life and all you're seeing is negative, it's hard to be positive. But if you focus on being positive, a lot of the negative will roll right off your back. It's kind of weird, you know. And I
Yeah.
think that that's important to like just pass that on to people and try to help somebody who having a bad day not make a decision that will, you know, directly reflect everybody and, you know, change everybody's outlook of life. You know, it's crazy.